Hi everybody, I'm Seamus.
I am Josh.
I'm Ritzgarn.
And I'm Chris.
And against all expectations, we are playing a Dishonored game that was not Dishonored 2, which is... How long ago did this come out?
Like late 2013 or something like that, early 2014. I've been campaigning for this since, like, fucking the end of the Dishonored 1 season. Is like, hey, the Dishonored 1 season was really cool, that was a fun game, the DLC's way better, let's do that. Now that Dishonored 2 has come out, and it's clear, like, just how much this DLC is important to really understanding the context of that game, now we can finally play it.
Well, it's interesting because Dishonored made such a splash in terms of its gameplay, but I feel like its legacy really deflated quickly.
I don't think so, given that Prey is coming out later this year and is seemingly taking a lot from the emergent first-person-y design, especially since Deus Ex has moved away from that. Like, right now, Dishonored is the only franchise really keeping that alive in major AAA games.
Yeah.
So I think in a way, it became more important with time because it's the only game that does that, I guess, other than maybe Far Cry, but Far Cry has become such a...
Well, that's what
franchise.
I'm getting at. I mean,
they
it
did
became
put out
important
a Thief.
in terms of its... It became important in terms of the progress its mechanics made and kind of as a proof of concept, but it didn't become important in the sense that everybody was talking about Dishonored the next year or the year after that, and a lot of games were aping it. Like, that never happened.
That's true.
It's a difficult game to ape. I mean, it's a bit like Hitman.
Right. But I would argue that Dishonored had more broad success than really a Hitman game ever has.
Yeah, sure. I'm holding off on hitting the new game button here because I think it's going to launch into fucking narration.
Do you have
so this is Dishonored: The Night of Dunwall. And we're going to play as Dowd, who's that dude that I don't think we killed in our playthrough. He's the guy who assassinated the Empress.
No, you didn't kill him. You just walked away and then threw a bottle at his head, which I thought was absolutely uproariously hilarious.
So... Okay, I won't spoil anything.
Let's hit new game here. Oh, okay. This is difficulty.
Just do veteran. We don't need to
play
replay
on Master
a lot.
Assassin. No.
Just do veteran.
Difficulty here.
Look at his face on Master Assassin. That's not the face of a Master Assassin. That's the face of a guy who's already had 4, and the bartender just tried to kick him out because they then discovered that he'd been pouring from his own hip flask into those lagers, and now he suddenly picked a fight with a guy who likes a different new kid on the block than he does.
Could float a whaling ship.
So every frickin' Dishonored game starts in about the same square mile of space.
Yeah. This is a really important location.
Like, you come here in Dishonored 2 and in Dishonored 1.
The universe.
It's like Back to the
Hill
Future's
Valley of
1955.
Dishonored.
Yes, exactly.
Dead eyes.
Honestly, even if you consider this outside the context of the first Dishonored, though, this is an exciting way to begin a video game. Certainly a more exciting intro than Dishonored's actual beginning was.
Shake apart everything
I don't know, Dishonored's actual beginning, like, I jumped on someone's head and then got arrested for treason, so, like, that was pretty cool.
Who was just flying there? Was
I think
Corvo?
that's Corvo.
I don't remember him flying.
You got to see his feet.
Yeah, well, you know, you never actually get to see Corvo move, but it turns out he moves a lot like that dancer Sia gets for her videos.
Well, they had that, like, weird thing in this game where you never get to see Corvo's face. Aside from,
and then
like,
they show it everywhere in the sequel.
Right,
okay, so
right.
should we establish some ground rules about how much of the sequel we talk about, Josh? Because I feel like that's going to bleed over a lot.
Like, something to understand with this game is, like...
the gripping Dishonored canon?
There is definitely some stuff that we shouldn't talk about with the sequel in terms of spoilers and whatever, especially since I think we're planning on doing that one at some point soon. Why am I leaning? Oh, my lean is working. But this game was really this DLC took sort of like the lessons they learned from Dishonored and like made better gameplay and more interesting character and a more interesting story. And it wasn't really clear until Dishonored 2 came out, but like this is very much the blueprint for what they did in Dishonored 2.
Yeah.
I forgot how much I
not
hated
simply in terms of
Poser.
gameplay, but like the story itself is very not only similar to Dishonored 2, but like very
sets it
directly
up,
connected to it.
This is effectively a prequel to the sequel. This is the Dishonored, the pre-sequel.
Was different.
Yeah, basically.
This time, you can't just
Like it fills
This
the
is
same
before
role.
they
It's
changed
sort of-
the Outsider's voice actor, so he's still really lame.
Your story is close.
He's still
Just
kind of
think,
like
they had to make his character design this confrontationally
What
boring.
ending will you make for yourself?
It's better
Like,
in
it
the
took a
sequel.
very
I'm going to
talented
give you
artist
one last
under very
deep
strict
dive.
instructions to make a
It's
character
a
design
mystery.
with this little going
One
on.
that starts with
Like,
a name.
I feel like a
Alright.
lot of the actual problem with the Outsider was the delivery of his lines.
Okay,
Like,
Scott,
'cause-
here's a shitload of Valium. Now go do your
Like
lines.
that guy.
Yeah, like
That
the
guy
voice
looks
direction was
cooler.
really
For
bad.
6 months.
Like, look at that.
Um,
Like, there's a lot of cool character designs in Dishonored,
Every
and it feels so
character.
weird
6
that the
months.
outsider
I
looks
tried to
like some
forget what
kid
I've
who
done
just
to
grabbed
others.
clothes from the, like, rent a
But there was no
costume bin
forgetting.
at the Ren Fair for people
I
who've
needed to
showed up
find
and
my
feel
next
guilty
move.
that they aren't getting into the spirit of
All I
things.
had was that name.
And then acted like he
'cause
was
the
in the spirit of
Outsider-
things.
Who was she?
Well, the Outsider in Dishonored 2 is, like, he's not
Oh, an ally.
great, but he's
Word
way
came
better
from
than
my
he was
second
in
in command,
these
Lurk.
games.
Dishonored,
And, like
like, the
more
Outsider in
subtly
this
menacing.
Dishonored
Lurk was especially good
is like
at uncovering
a
them.
bad
There was a
NPC.
ship called the Delilah.
Like, I can't decide if it's more like
Hunted
an
whales,
NPC from a
Bungie
unsatisfying, like, jerk around
A
Dunwall
former
Dragons
decade.
campaign.
Good.
Where the DM
Yeah,
knows
I
that he
noticed
wants you to
that.
think that the villain is
Man,
cool
his
and
work is
mysterious, but doesn't know how to
crazy.
affect those things.
A ship
Or
called the
whether
Delilah.
it's more like a bored
be a
NPC in a
coincidence.
LARP who doesn't really have
But
an
it's
interesting
not.
character but is milking the most
In
out of a
Dunwall.
completely unimpressive
What do
role. and just not
NPCs
doing a
in
good job.
LARPs
of it.
look like?
It depends on the structure, but generally speaking, like, the old school of LARPs that never really caught on because it was garbage was you have a team of people who are like the first into the breach, who are the protagonists, and they're like the Dungeons and Dragons party, and everything's about them, and everybody else just plays like NPCs or monsters that they run into.
So, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so we don't have a home base here, so this is like the thing that pops up between missions where you can do the stuff that you would do in the home base, get upgrades and whatnot.
Well, I was just going to say
Already,
this,
bone charm
this is
capacity
the
would be
beginning of
good.
the bleeding over and from Thief into Dishonored, where it was
Yeah.
already there. Like the store page was already there, but this feels very like before mission. Here is your purchasing environment, complete with upgrades and favors. I can't remember if favors were in Dishonored 1, were they?
Not really.
You know, I
think
don't
so.
remember. I don't know.
Because that's a very steep one thing.
I think we're gonna attempt to do what we did last time, which is like try to do low chaos and then fail horribly.
Yeah,
I got
ideal.
bored, so I started
It's not really
gardening.
fun to fuck shit up unless it's
Turns
like
out
part
we're
of
here on
a
the perfect day.
ongoing rolling
There's a strike at the
disaster.
plant, and it's no
This is
wonder.
also sort of the start
Well,
of
runs this place like a
Dishonored
prison.
moving away
The
from
stupid
like
workers can't even get in without a time card.
it's all about the
When the strike
dudes.
started, the butcher's call
Like
Yes,
Dishonored 1,
like,
there
okay.
wasn't really any meaningful female characters in it. Like there were a couple female villains, but most of them got horrible endings. Like remember Mr. Stalker guy?
There'll be other ways in, I'm sure of it.
And the characterization the
You don't
female
want that to have
characters
a long
did get
run.
was just sort of
Just to keep
weird.
an old man safe.
Yeah.
The game has-
Dishonored 2 is very
I
much the
found something
opposite.
for you.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of
the
really
series has
interesting female
been
characters.
like hellbent on moving away from that ever since the first game. The DLC and the sequel both move very, very far away from that by a lot.
My mouse sensitivity
So-
feels a little weird also. None
So,
of this
again,
is set
I-
up the way I want it.
I as much as I love this, it is weird to cover it now just because this does tie so tightly into Dishonored 2. Like, I want to talk about the comparison between the two different voice actresses for, what's her name?
Oh
what's her
yeah,
name
she
here.
appears in Dishonored 2.
But not under her current name.
I wasn't
and I can't remember what her current name is.
actually bring that up, but I guess since you brought it up,
I'm trying not to spoil anything. I'm just saying, like she appears in the game, and I'm trying to remember what her name is there or here.
Well, that's sort of
Is
our
it Billy
question that we
Lurk?
should answer right now.
Is-
Why did we ultimately decide to do the Knife of Dunwall at this point? And why not just go
well,
to Dishonored 2 instead?
we want to do Dishonored 2, but it's pretty close to Dishonored 2's release right now, so...
Also, to do Dishonored 2 really does necessitate covering this material. Like we said earlier, this is the pre-sequel to Dishonored 2. It sets up the villain for Dishonored 2. It does some other stuff to set up various story and plot ideas for Dishonored 2.
Oh, no.
Goodness.
Oh, man.
It also does some design stuff
Toss
that
this
gets
guy
reflected
over
in
here.
Dishonored 2. For example, I know we kind of talked over... Don't throw them with the rats. You gotta kill the rats. Otherwise, they'll eat them. Rats don't care. Chaos.
Your eyes!
The other reason is that it moves certain design ideologies, like the fact that we talk over it, but our character Dowd is now fully voiced by Michael Madsen, which is something that happens in Dishonored 2, but did not happen in Dishonored 1. Corvo in Dishonored 2 is voiced by Stephen Russell of Thief fame, and it is fantastic, and I love it. But I will gush about that when we do Dishonored 2. Right now, just know that it's interesting that they decided to ditch the silent protagonist thing as quickly as the DLC, which makes me think there was probably either some tension about having a silent protagonist in the main game, or they, I think after playtesting, realized it didn't work and didn't have time to go write a bunch of lines and hire a voice actor.
I feel like Dishonored's silent protagonist wouldn't have mattered if it weren't for two things. Number one, everybody wants to talk to you, and they want to talk to you at great length. And it feels increasingly strange that you have nothing to say in return.
Yeah, it super didn't work in Dishonored 1.
Well, that's the one reason. The other is that the game so desperately needed something. You know, it tried so much, but there's clearly something it was lacking. Like there was some sort of spark that was absent. It had this great aesthetic. It had like they were trying very hard to create sort of this unique setting. Although sometimes I do sort of wonder what the point of this setting is.
I mean,
actually, this is kind of a...
Right,
right, but like, okay, this is kind of a bigger. I'm not sure I have an answer set out here, so I'm just gonna kind of start talking, and anyone can stop me if I start and/or completely stop making sense. But you know, when you play a setting that a GM created, like for a tabletop game, for example, you can always sort of tell the difference between the GM really had a vision here for what they wanted that was very strong, and like it was necessary for them to create this unique setting because it was like that this really resonates. Like the theme and like sort of the action of this game just clicks so well with the setting that this was a necessary creative project. And you can sort of tell the difference between that and the GM had a cool idea and everything else just kind of bolted onto it, or just the GM didn't want to learn another setting, so they made their own sort of for the sake of having something different. And this is such a beautifully realized setting in every way. Just every dimension of this game is so lovingly rendered, but I feel like it doesn't really fit together in any comprehensive way with the mechanics or with even its own sort of themes. I never got the sense... This was never transcendent for me, for all the effort that went into making it.
For me, my love of this setting is all visual. Like, I love the look of the place, but there's nothing in it that I like, oh man, I wish we learned more about that, or oh, this is so fascinating, I want to... Like, the setting itself feels entirely based on art style, and there's not... I feel like there's nothing to really grab onto.
I feel like that's true here.
The sequel,
I feel like the sequel helps.
Is better about it, yeah.
Is a capital offense. These include metallurgy, real collection and
like the problem with Dishonored 1 is that it's basically, what if Victorian England was a whale-obsessed fascist
They used to tell
state,
stories about
basically,
them in the slums of
and I can see how that's kind of like, okay, I get it, but I'm not that interesed in it.
Oh wait, I need to get
The establishment of other lands in the
tile.
sequel, I think, helps a lot to sort of build out
Yeah.
the world with different
And those were, like,
architectures,
always
different
here.
politics.
They just weren't really explored in anything other than just like random books you found. I hope I don't die
definitely
from this.
feel like the setting was so broad and so colorful, and in a lot of presentation ways so cartoonish.
That was amazing.
It might have actually behooved it to be a little bit more over the top than it was.
For me, I'm just a little fish in a big pond.
One wonders about how effective Dowd would be as a master assassin if just any random bloke off the street recognizes his face immediately.
I work for a
Right.
very rich
Like,
man
for example,
who's keen
people
on
make a
seeing
lot of the
Martha.
fact that,
Business
the
will
outsider
pay
might
off.
really be a
This whole
whale,
business with the
or
strike,
something, like the
I'll
spirit of the
We
whales.
got a mole on the inside.
And that
His
could be cool
backstory
and
is
interesting.
explicitly established in Dishonored 2, actually, which is one of the things
Is that
I
what
didn't
it
like
is?
about it.
I feel so bad when we keep bringing
I
up
don't want
the
to go
sequel.
into it, but
On the place all day waiting
well,
for
it's
you.
hard. Like that's kind of the thing. Like this is the setup for the sequel in a very big way. Like
make a little
it's hard to
mayhem
talk
in
about
it.
this game now without talking about
She's
Dishonored
still
2.
alive. She'd be able to get you
Well, let me put it this
everything you
way.
need to know about that
I
ship.
think
No
that,
question.
like an example
And
of
a
something that could make this
substantial
game
reward
interesting is
besides.
if the outsider had
Name's Abigail
1% as
Ames.
much dialogue and was a giant whale.
I
Like,
don't remember
I mean-
if he even shows up again.
Are we going to play this
Like, that
game
may have
again
just
of
been
like...
it.
I mean, that was a huge part of our Dishonored 1 season, is just listing ways we could vastly improve the outsider for basically no cost or effort. And then it's just a well that never runs dry. There's almost nothing you could do that would make him worse.
You're
could
right. You know
take
what?
His, you could take his
that is
dialogue and
overly-
make him absolutely... You could make him completely silent so that he just smiles at you during all those cutscenes and says nothing, and that would also be an improvement.
Yeah, but if he was a whale that like floated by in like one 10-second cutscene that's like, I'm a whale, here's your powers, and then you never see him again, that would be amazing.
Oh, I would play that game again. He just like never even stops to address you. He's just like talking as he flies by, like Doppler effect. I'm a whale. Here's your superpowers. Go fuck him up. And then like you get to an outsider trophy, and the outsider just like appears, and he's like, "You found my secret snack place."
So, oh, God damn it, I don't want to talk about the sequel. Well, suffice it to say, we are searching for something called... We are searching for a woman or a boat, I believe. Are we searching for a boat at this
Well,
point?
we're searching for this outsider showed up and said like, "Hey, so Delilah." Just think
Yeah.
about that, and then left. And it would have been way cooler if he just said that and said it that way rather than what he did say. But like, so we're kind of just. Oh,
Assassin!
hello. Right. I'm leaving now. Bye.
Will no longer be replaced. Due to abuse of this indulgence,
Gotta
Oh,
go get a
come
time
on!
card.
without a time card will be denied admission to the ground.
Wow.
And some
But actually, here's a better
Man,
example.
this
Sokolov.
sucks.
So all we hear about is how Sokolov is like this raging libertine
I don't wanna
dude
murder
who's
people.
like is constantly
It's not
going
me,
off on
that's
these
Corvo.
raging benders. But we never actually get to see that, do we?
No, and we see even less of that in the sequel. He becomes sort of a
Yeah.
John Hammond figure.
Yeah, this game is instead just obsessed with showing Dowd doing this great big meet and greet with the City Watch.
I ain't stupid. I know you.
All right.
No, but seriously, Sokolov
Oh,
does have
man.
like a John Hammond-esque transformation.
Yeah.
Making noise, you clumsy sot.
Welcome to Outsider Park.
I need more men.
God, that's not that far off.
So yeah, basically what we're doing is the outsider said, "Look for Delilah," and I guess that's not a very common name in this setting because apparently there's only one.
It's a boat.
Well, that's what we're... Well, why are we even here then if you're gonna fucking, like, spoil the whole thing that it's a boat? Like, why don't we just go fucking take the next step? It's some boat some dude named Tim made, and I guess we don't even have to break into this place anymore. God, Camps, you ruin everything.
I'm sorry. Well, I don't want to ruin that it's a person, and I definitely don't want to ruin who it is.
I can't imagine how Delilah could possibly be a person.
Well, I'm trying
God
to
damn it,
deflect
Chris.
from
I
the
was really
truth.
getting into the gripping Dishonored canon.
Oh,
The gripping story of this boat.
is Delilah Orson Welles' sled? Is that where this is going? Did you just ruin
Not
it,
really.
Chris?
It's so
No,
blood sled.
We learn it in like 30 minutes here, so...
Sokolov dies, and he just, like, releases a grenade, and he just says, like, Delilah.
Oh, that's why I'm
And
dead.
it's his friggin'...
His pet grenade.
Well, instead of a
Dishonored 1, the Knife of Dunwall, is the Citizen Kane of Dishonored video games.
Hey there, Delilah. I swear to you, I'll pay the bills with this knife.